I have a boss here that its health bar is incorrect. It says it has 0 out of 999999999 health, but when you damage it, it doesn't do anything. However, you can check the description. It only actually has 5,000 health. So let's pop this. This is done using the user's health override property under the boss registration. You can set a fake health and a fake max health, which you can set dynamically, which I'm going to explain during mono behaviors. Now, you're probably wondering why this is a useful mechanic for some bosses, and that's for phasing, or if you want to pretend that a boss has 0 health for some specific mechanic. I did this with the Blast Populous and Mag Moab boss fight in Boss Rush Recharged. With that out of the way, I'm gonna work on the Silver boss now. This one also uses health and time triggers, however it does things that aren't normal in vanilla. This one can heal Moabs, and it can sell your non-hero towers up to a total value of 10,000 cash. First, you'll need a time trigger model, which I put an action ID of heal Moab. Now, there's no behavior associated because there's no heal balloons action in the game. Instead, I'm going to patch it using time trigger patch. Now, first, I need to make sure it's the correct action ID by doing comparison. The model. By the way, this if statement will only occur if it's this time trigger from the boss. Then I need to do some comparisons of damaged Moabs. Now this will return a list of every balloon there is, but I have to make sure it's a Moab first. So I'll do I can do a comparison. Now, the way the math works is if the Moab has 200 max health and 200 health, this will equal to 0, which isn't damaged at all. However, if the balloon has, say, 50 health, and then this in max is 200, this will return 150, which is a lot more. So if this is the most damage, it'll set the most damage variable to that number. So next I have to also record the balloon's ID, so Moab. So we can record that, and it'll do a whole comparison. Oh yeah, also I should make sure it's not healing a boss. So I'll have to do this, make sure it's not a boss. Now after it runs through all of this, it's going to try and get the Moab that is most damaged. So balloon. So if it's a valid balloon, then its health is doomed on. Yeah, I'm running update display, so in case it has damage states, it'll fix them accordingly. You can see in game I'm spawning a bunch of Moabs, and someone getting damaged, but then they get recovered. Now let's say you want a more visible effect when the heal patch occurs. You have to create a public prefab reference, which I did here. Then you're gonna have to set this to a value. So here, I'm gonna take the effect from the Alchemist. So this will retrieve the Berserker Brew to projectile model, and then take its acid ID, and then set heal effect to that. And then in the patch, added this line, spawn effect. Well, spawn effect takes a prefab reference, a position, in this case it's a target, and then it also takes a rotation, a scale of the effect, and this is a duration. And there's a whole bunch of other parameters, but I'm not going to touch those so right now. You can look back in game. There's now a visible wing effect each time a Moab gets healed. Honestly, I'm not fond of a boss that sells towers. It just seems inconvenient for the players since you can just rebuy the tower. But this is the only suggestion I got for boss abilities, so I'm adding it anyways. I set up a spawn balloons action model for the silver boss, and it already has an action ID set up, silver BFBs. So I'm going to run that through the health percent trigger in order to activate the selling tower function. So once I made sure it's the correct ID, I'll first set up some variables. First, equals 10,000. This is the maximum amount of cash you can sell. So, much like the time trigger, you can get all towers in the game. And then the first, let's see. First, have to make some stats. If the have to make sure it's not a hero, because that's gonna be quite annoying if that gets sold. And I don't want it to sell. Let's see what I think. If first, let's cheat. Worth equals tower.worth. Okay, this is the value of the tower, and we turn that into an int. Let's see. Okay, so here's the math. Each time, this is 10,000. As long as the worth is less than total sold, it can sell the tower. But if the worth is less, then it can sell it. However, the total sold gets reduced. Once this reaches, if it's too low, then it can't sell any more towers. Now I'm going to test this ability in game. This tower is worth more than 10,000, so it's not going to be affected. So I'm going to place a few cheaper towers just to test. I can see these towers got sold because the values were lower. There's one last ability. I'm going to make the boss immune to military damage below 50% health. So I set up the action ID and added the boss. But I'm also going to make use of the extra info. However, I'm also going to set the extra info tags to military immune. I don't want to do that initially until it activates. So down here I have the military immune action ID if statement, and then it's going to change the boss registration. Here, the boss registration, this contains all registered bosses. So I need to get it by the boss's ID, and then I can set its extra info text to military immune. And this will set the boss's tower set immunity to military. This mechanic was used for Dread Balloon. You can see here the boss's extra info panel is now visible, but doesn't have any text within it. So now I'm just tweaking this boss a bit. It sold my Duckman Gunner by the back. Then you can see once it reached 50%, it's no longer able to take any damage from the military towers, but it can still take damage from the wizard monkey. That's all I have for the silver tier. For gold tier, I'm gonna go into mono behaviors. Basically, you can assign game scripts to singular objects, which is really useful for really integrated mechanics. It was pretty much mandatory for Boss Rush Recharged. The boss is going to phase into something greater, but you're going to have to stay tuned for that.